New Haven is family.
New Haven is people, for sure.
New Haven is diverse, and I really appreciate that.
New Haven is growing. Intellectually, the number of innovators and investors and developers, the will to accelerate that kind of change is growing.
I would say New Haven is dynamic. It's changed a lot over just the 15 years that I've been part of the community, and it's amazing to watch the growth that's happening.
New Haven is underrated. As I go out into other markets, time and time again, I think people underestimate New Haven, and it's mostly because they don't know the city.
New Haven is very forward-thinking. I hear a lot of what's the possibilities? What can we do? What's a new way we can look at that? And I do think that's unique.
New Haven is opportunity. So much opportunity for people to start a business, build a building, start a nonprofit.
For me, New Haven is the place where my hopes and dreams have been facilitated. Full stop.
Welcome, everyone. Hi, I'm Amy Kundrat with Yale Ventures. Welcome to New Haven, the next great innovation hub. As we celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Yale Innovation Summit and the remarkable growth of New Haven's innovation ecosystem, we knew the summit needed a panel focused on the future of our city as a leading innovation hub. Today's panel brings together leaders across sectors and industry to share their insights and strategies for creating an environment conducive to innovation, entrepreneurship, and inclusive economic growth in the Elm City. We'll here discuss the elements necessary to elevate New Haven as one of the country's next great innovation hubs, and one that can ensure a thriving and inclusive future for all in our community. Today's moderator is Alexandra Dahm. She joined Yale earlier this year as the Associate Vice President for New Haven Affairs and University Properties. Previously, she served as Deputy Commissioner and Chief Investment Officer for the Connecticut Department of Economic Development. And she's overseen its business growth with initiatives such as Connecticut Small Business Boost Fund, Job CT Program, and the Manufacturing and Innovation Fund. Prior to that, Dahm led Field Properties, a real estate investment firm, and had a career in real estate development and as a strategy consultant after attending Harvard College and Harvard Business School. Please join me in welcoming our panel's moderator, Alexandra Dahm.
Great. Sound okay? Yes, it sounds okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here this morning. I'm very excited to talk about the best city in the world, in my opinion, but of course that's my job for that to be my opinion. And we have some of our most important thought leaders here in New Haven, and I'm gonna let you all introduce yourself before we get into questions.
Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Marika Masuoka, and I'm a partner at Pelly Clark and Partners. We're a New Haven architecture firm, but we have a global practice. And I think of relevance today to this conference, we're currently working on or in 4 innovation hubs. That would be Carmenton at the Ohio State, Pittsburgh's Innovation Hub, Philadelphia's University City, and I guess in New Haven, the next great innovation hub.
Hi everyone, my name is Justin Elliker. I'm the mayor of New Haven. It's also my job to say that this is the greatest city on the face of the earth. And like Alexandra, I actually believe that too, which is good. I've been mayor for about 4.5 years now. It's felt like a flash and also like an eternity. It's one of the most exciting jobs I've had. And regularly as I go around the city, and I kind of, you may have heard me say this before, but people come up to me and say, man, you picked a hell of a time to be mayor. In kind of you've faced COVID, all these other challenges. And on the flip side of it, that's very related to our conversation today, I've picked a hell of a time to be mayor because New Haven is just booming.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Clement, founding CEO of CONCAT. CONCAT is a workforce development and youth development organization. Also founding CEO of CONCORP, an economic development, economic justice organization, where we have a large signature project, which I'll probably talk about this morning on Dixwell Avenue. But I'm just so happy to be here. I was hoping I didn't wear the same suit that I wore in the video.
In the video? I
But
did
that was a
notice
while
that.
ago. But I'm happy to be here.
I wasn't going to call you out, but you said it. Good. We're going to jump right in. So Mayor Elliker, what are some of the top priorities for you in your administration when it comes to economic development in the city?
So we're a city right now of 139,000, and we are growing very, very fast. And we have the goal of, in 10 years, which is when we'll celebrate our 250th anniversary, to be a city of 150,000. And so the growth that I think is driving the enthusiasm around New Haven is in several different buckets. One is what a lot of you here are interested in, which is around innovation, biosciences, life sciences, quantum, which I don't understand, but I don't need to understand just how important it is for the future of New Haven's economy. And there's, I think, a lot of conversation that you'll hear later on today about that. So the innovation side is one. The second is on the culture. New Haven is the cultural capital of Connecticut. And in a much more remote world that we live in today, people get to choose where they live more often than not. And people are choosing cities that are just incredible places to be. And so we're leaning into those. But as we grow, my priority is that we grow inclusively and learn from a lot of the other cities that have grown before us, to not push people out that have been struggling in our community, but been members of our community a long time. And so that's why we're leaning into really expanding affordable housing. That's why we're working very hard to make sure our residents have access to the growing job sectors that are really booming in our city.
So Eric, that's a good segue. The mayor is very focused on inclusive growth, and Concorp and Concat have been a partner at the table with both the city and with Yale in ensuring that inclusive growth. Can you talk to us a little bit about, as the city grows, how do we make sure that residents have access to employment, to training opportunities, and that they're benefiting from that growth?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important for me, especially when having this type of conversation, to really, although, as I said, I want to speak in the spirit of the video when I talked about hopes and dreams for me, while at the same time understanding that I'm doing this work in the backdrop of suffering and struggling, especially in Black and brown communities in New Haven, right? There's a pronounced unhoused population in this city. There is a deep and swelling poverty and persistent poverty in this city. And so I think for me, it's important that that truth be told while we have this conversation about what's possible. So for me, it's really about hearing the voices of the people. What do the people want? It's not so much for me about communities, especially in Dixwell and Newhartville, and I mention them a lot because that's where I work and that's who I serve. It's not about them being a part of the city's plan. It is about the city being a part of their plan, right? And so what Concat and Concorp has done, I think, is really get communities to understand their own power, especially as it relates to inclusive growth. It's very difficult to be inclusive if you're not ready to be inclusive. And so what we've been doing in terms of our training, workforce development training, we have BioLaunch that we're working with Yale University, and I saw Dr. Yarborough here who runs BioLaunch, which is a bioscience training where we want folks who are Black and brown especially, who are living in communities of poverty, to be a part of this bioscience economy. We have our phlebotomy, and we're about to start medical assistance program and a culinary school. And in that culinary school, 30% of the folks are folks who are entering society again. And so those things are important as we're talking about inclusion, that people be ready, not only to be inclusive, but to be included. And then also Concorp, where I think we have about 5 or 6 verticals that we're working from. One is, we have an entrepreneurship academy with Quinnipiac School of Business. And Jakiva Morgan, who is here, runs that. Then we have our very large signature project on Dixwell Avenue. It's a $220 million project, 8 acres of land that we purchased. We're now going to be building a new Concat space, 184 units of housing, a performing arts center, retail spaces, supermarket, greenhouses, townhouses, and an office building. All of this from hearing what the community wanted and needed. That's our way of being inclusive, is really hearing the voices of the people. And I saw Anna Blanding, our Chief Investment Officer, and Paul McCraven, our Chief Operating Officer here, and they're leading that work as well. And so for me, it's not about just saying inclusion, it's about how to be included and being ready to be included.
Every time I hear you speak, I marvel at how much you're doing, and you just listed a lot for everyone to digest. But it sounds like, if I'm summarizing, you have 5 or 6 different industries where you're training people to enter, from anywhere from an entry level, hopefully, obviously, increasing up the ladder, but also creating physical space that's responding to the community's needs. So you've got 2, and maybe even more categories of activity, but those are really 2 important buckets to focus on.
Well, also, and I failed to mention, and I know you want to segue, but I think it's important, we were able to start a real estate portfolio. So now we're buying homes in New Hallville and Dixwell because we knew, 1, we wanted to create more affordability in our work. 2, we knew folks who are not indigenous to those communities are coming in land banking. They're buying a property for the purpose of their own advantage, as opposed to the folks who are living in that community. And so we said, we'll buy the property and give it back to the people.
So that is a good segue, because I think physical place has a lot to do with why New Haven is so wonderful, a lot of our physical attributes, and we can continue to work on making sure it stays wonderful for the people who've been here for a long time. So I want to turn to you, Mariko. What role do physical spaces play in an innovation hub? And how do you come in and work with cities to make sure we're fostering those innovative spaces?
Well, that's an interesting point. I think one of the fundamental things that you do when you work on innovation, and something that is probably inherent in any development, is that they do try to create public spaces which are things which help animate the space. I mean, that's what's really critical. And I think the public spaces are, for a city, what establishes the sense of place, the sense of community, and engages the people around it. But I think, when I look at all of the public spaces in these innovation hubs, they all require accessibility. They have to be well maintained. They have to be safe. And I think the thing that's probably most important is that in the design is not so much the design, but the programming of the space. The programming has to be something that sponsors events, hosts, food trucks, has concerts, movie night like on the New Haven Green. I think all of those things are the things that animate and create vitality. And that's what I think invites people and really draws people in. And it's not just, tourists. It's really, I guess, ultimately investors. So I think it's very important.
So staying on this theme of physical spaces and physical infrastructure, the city of New Haven is doing a lot to have infrastructure-wise to facilitate the growth that you foresee, that we are already seeing. Do you want to walk us through some of those infrastructure investments, whether they're physical or some of the programs that Eric was mentioning before, but infrastructure that's helping innovation in the city?
Sure. I think one of the exciting things that has come out of the pandemic is the American Rescue Plan funds and the Inflation Reduction Act, which have driven a lot of additional funding into cities like ours and presented a real opportunity for us to grow and create the spaces that people want to see. And so we received $12 million for Long Wharf Park renovations. We're basically going to entirely re-envision Long Wharf Park. And if you're not from New Haven, you're you've probably driven through New Haven, and that's our advertising for New Haven of welcoming people. And it's a place that so many people in our community use. There's a lot of food trucks there. They'll be reconfigured. There's going to be a much larger grassy place and then places for businesses. We've received $8 million to basically re-envision the New Haven Green and create a lot more walkable and bicycle-friendly environments downtown. We've put a lot of effort into, and you will start to see the fruits of this, re-envisioning a lot of the major corridors through the city with bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure as well. And so that's one category. A second category is on the infrastructure that drives the innovation economy. I saw Carter Winstanley here, who's been a great partner in addition to the state in building 100 College and now 101 College, which is almost complete in our downtown crossing project. And there's a third parcel that basically covers a highway that used to exist there. With these gigantic buildings that house biosciences. And so in addition to creating a lot of innovation activity there, we're getting millions of additional dollars in tax revenue that can help us provide a lot of the services that our residents need. And then the third category is on housing. We need 90,000 units of housing in the state of Connecticut. And a lot of our suburban counterparts are really fighting any growth. And we're leaning into that. We've built 1,400 units in the past 4 years. We have 3,500 in the pipeline. And 40% of those are affordable and deeply affordable. So we're working very, very hard to ensure that we have a lot of new residential for all tiers of income so that we can have people that are able to live in our beautiful city and address a lot of the job needs that we have too, because people want to live closer to where they work. There's a lot more work to do here, particularly on the housing front, but it's been, if you were in New Haven 10 years ago and just came back today and wandered around the city, I suspect you'll be like, I'm a little bit lost because there's all these new buildings up. It doesn't even look in many places like what it used to look. And that's a real special thing for, an indication of the direction we're headed.
And some of those road reworking projects, just to brag on your behalf a little bit, are reclaiming road in order to build housing.
Yeah, so we got a significant amount of funding from the state to, as one example, convert a large portion of State Street, which is basically a 4-lane road that doesn't have the need for 4 lanes. It has a need for 2 lanes with the number of cars that you see going through there, so that we basically will narrow that to 2 lanes, create a pedestrian and bicycle cycle track. And then we've added along the train tracks an incredible amount of developable land adjacent to a train station, so that we're going to be activating that area in a much more productive way for all kinds of different reasons. And so there's a lot of innovation from our staff. I saw Mike Piscatelli here as well from our economic development staff to help us do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of innovations happening in the private sector in New Haven, but also in City Hall. You came up with this proposal and went to the state to ask for the funds to say, I think that sounds pretty innovative. Take some road and turn it into land where people can live. And that's the development dream. That's the growth dream. So
you got a good team.
You got a good team. So back to you, Eric. You talked a little bit about how communities need to include the voices of people who've been here, who've been members of these communities forever, even as we grow. What are some best practices on making sure that communities, cities, universities are including those voices? I think you're saying we need to go to the neighborhoods, not expect the neighborhoods to come to us. What are some best practices on how to do that?
I think going to the community, assuming you absolutely know nothing, and asking questions with a spirit of humility. From those who are really doing things in community, but even more so to grandmothers. And I mean, grandmothers have the best data, in my opinion. They do. And sitting and hearing the stories of what, and I again, I'm going to speak about Dixwell, which is a historically Black community. And historic Black community in New Haven, and New Hallville the same, and really sitting and listening to the stories of what was, and then talking about what could be with people. And one thing is really important as it relates to, because we're talking, your question is really about community engagement, is if in fact you are endeavoring to transform community, you have to be willing to be transformed first. Mm-hmm. That community you will change before community does. And so I think having the courage to understand that and believe that, and also ensure that people in Dixwell and New Hallville create the world they want to live in. Right? No offense to the mayor, he's doing a fantastic job, and I consider him a friend. But the city cannot, in my opinion, dictate the world that people in their communities want to live in. The people in their community dictate the world they want to live in. And they invite the city into that world. And so I think understanding it from that lens, Alexandra, and I know this to be true because I made a lot of mistakes. And probably my biggest mistake was coming into Dixwell and New Hallville with these beautiful renderings of what we are going to build. Into every meeting and just assuming because these people look like me, I'm from them, that they will love what we are about to do. And when I tell you those were some of the most painful meetings, because I couldn't understand why the people do not like what we are presenting. And then this woman, and I wish she were here, her name is Ella Smith. She lives in Florence Virtue housing, behind the Dixwell, which used to be the Dixwell Plaza. She pulled me to the side. And this is probably the best advice I ever got as it relates to community engagement. And she said, and she's Miss Ella, I think is 84 years old now. And she said, Mr. Clemens, you know we love you. And as soon as I heard that, I said, oh God. But we don't know you. And so the mistake I was making, Alexandra, was I was presenting the project more than I was presenting myself. They didn't care about the project. They wanted to know who was in front of them. And so the more I presented myself, the more we got traction. And so I think, again, it's one thing to talk about inclusion, and I think it's a huge thing. I think the city is doing a great job. I know the Community Foundation is doing a great job with this. I know there's an Inclusive Growth Center being stood up with the city and this school. But folks got to want to be included. Not everybody wants to be included. Not everybody believes in inclusion. And so, to the extent that you can engage community in a very humble, courageous, and thoughtful way, and listening more than doing, I think is really important.
A lot of very good lessons for, I think, everyone here in that. Number one is, I think we need to have our next Yale Town Hall in the Dixwell Plaza project. We need to come to you and have our meeting there. So you got to get building, Eric. I need to be having my meetings in there.
We start, and I know Paul is here and Anna's here, and I want to get this right because they're going to say something to me if I don't. We start assembling the project in June, next month, and then we go in the ground in September. So you will start seeing vertical construction in a couple of months. Okay, so we're going to get that picture with the dirt in the air very soon. We'll probably do that in the summer. You'll be there. This project that Eric's talking about is unbelievable. Alrighty, so Mariko, I want to talk a little bit about adapting the fact that one of the great things about New Haven is that it's an old city with so much history, and the mayor talked about it being a cultural center of Connecticut. Again, I think it's a cultural center of the whole country, but I may be alone in that opinion, but it's a wonderful place with so much arts, so much architecture, so much history.
how do we make sure that we preserve and we adapt that existing culture, existing architecture, since it's a lot of what brings people here, while building so much around it and growing so quickly?
You know, that's pretty interesting. I mean, preserving cultural heritage is very important for a city. I mean, it's what makes each city unique, its own culture and that recognition. And I guess in architecture, probably there are two ways to approach it. One is the more literal, historic preservation, adaptive reuse, which is quite, a very good thing. We're seeing more and more of that adaptive reuse because it's more circular, more sustainable. But I think there's another notion, and I'll give you an example of one of our legacy projects. Our office did the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur. And what happened was the Malaysian government said, we want a building that's a tower that will be a landmark, which will put us on the map, that will say, we are like in this globalized emerging economy. We want to be recognized. And one of the things that our office did was we did a really very intense study about Islamic pattern architecture, Southeast Asian patterns in architecture. And then, we tried to combine some of the notions and sensibilities that we learned with notions of technology, structure, materials, and the need to build a tower. And I think in the end, what was very interesting is we ended up with two towers that each have a pattern which is actually based on an Islamic glyph motif. And upon that, you have a structural steel tube support, and then it's clad in stainless steel, but the vision glass is shaded with sunshades as a response to climate. It's a number of things that all together blended and created something where I think the heritage, the aspects of the culture and heritage were more intrinsic in the design. And in the end, I think what happened was, the physical form, the ideas that went into the design actually transcended things because the building itself has actually become a symbol of the country. So in many ways, I'm not advocating cultural appropriation. I'm not just doing a mashup of it. There has to be something that, you can take some concepts and you can combine ideas and make them unique. And I think that's what is an example of the Petronas Towers.
So we talked a little bit about, we talked a lot about physically landing in New Haven as a business. What are some of the ways in which, if we have a lot of folks maybe starting to think about starting their businesses here or already on the ground starting their businesses here, what are some of the programs in place for entrepreneurs? How does someone work with your office, with your economic development team, if they're thinking of starting a business here?
Sure. So Mike Piscatelli was over there. You want to wave your hand? You can talk to Mike. One of the things that during the American Rescue Plan, we received over $100 million. And we spent a lot of time engaging the community to determine how we would spend that money. And we did many different meetings in the community. We did robocalls. We did a lot of outreach and input sessions. And you wouldn't be surprised about a lot of the things that we heard about: more housing, jobs. We heard a lot about jobs, and in particular, I'd say two categories: training for young people that may not have a college degree, that can access jobs that are growing and pay a living wage. And then two is entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial jobs. And so what we've done with that is we're working on a career pathway school that is for young people that may choose not to go to college. And we've partnered with the Community Foundation to put $9 million into a program that helps invest in Black, Brown, women-owned businesses to help support the start of their businesses. And already we've put a lot of funding into the community and done lots of different ribbon cuttings around businesses that have started in New Haven. And I think, you know, what Eric, a little bit off topic from your specific question, but like a good politician, I'm going to answer the question that I want to answer and not the one asked. But I want to add to what Eric said, because I think it's important. There's a lot of leaders or future leaders in the room. I think you got to know who you are and what you bring to the table and what you don't bring to the table, right? And, you know, I'm a white guy from the suburbs that landed in New Haven and fell in love with this place. And so I bring that to the table in both a great way and a bad way, right? And so you want to tap into that humility within yourself to know that what you don't know, and then fill in the gaps of what you don't know. Surround yourself with a team that has lived experience, that comes from the community, that can help guide you and connect you to the community. Like Eric said, you know, you may not initially have that trust, but other people on your team, if you bring people in, should help you build that trust in the community. Partner with organizations that have that trust. You know, for example, we're working very hard to sign people up for a lot of climate initiatives. And you have someone knock on your door that you've never heard from that's saying, hey, you can get free insulation and low-cost solar panels on your roof. You're going to be like, well, wait a second, what's the catch here? But if you have someone that you know or an organization that you know that you've had success with before that shows up to your community meetings that says, hey, there's this free option for you, we've seen the uptake really increase on that side. And I think that's a very, very important thing to people's success. And then the final thing is just being present all the time as much as possible. Because over time, although there's I think a limit to what any of us can understand when we're in communities that we did grow up in, as you're present and you hear from people in all different types of circumstances in the community, you're likely to become wiser, but also likely to develop relationships where people are actually more willing to be honest with you about what their challenges are and willing to share.
I'll forgive you for the ad-libbing, which is
for the ad-libbing?
Yeah, which is good. I appreciate it. So Eric, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges for becoming an innovation hub? We are on our way. We're doing a great job, and Mike, who the mayor mentioned, Mike Piscatelli earlier, the economic development director for the city, he said, make sure to get the message out. We don't want to rest on our laurels. And we don't want to rest on our laurels because we've had such success, but we want to grow more. We want to keep the momentum up. So what are some of the challenges that we have to make sure we don't just rest on our laurels?
I think it's a very exciting time in New Haven. And you are doing a great job. Your office is doing a great job. Justin's office and Mike with Olivia Samuels is doing a great job. I think Josh Jabal is absolutely fantastic, and is what New Haven needed. And there's so many efforts that are now, I see, converging. And I think my estimation is that with all this kind of quantum speak and all these things, innovation speak and all these things that are happening, that there have been communities that have been left behind because New Haven has not hit reply all.
Love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the sore spot I see is that getting communities to a place where they can catch up to what is about to happen or what is happening in New Haven. And so I can connect this. I'm not ad-libbing at all. Right? It's akin to what your question is. And my point is, the point I want to make is, during the pandemic, we were able to raise a significant amount of money. And what we chose to do was to create, we work with the Housing Authority, Karen Du Bois Walton, and KeyBank, and Elm City Market. And not only did we get debit cards to give out to folks in New Hallville and Dixwell, $300 debit cards, we did that for months. we also were able to get food from Elm City Market because the distribution lines were down. And so that food was coming to New Haven. And myself and Opal Harmon, who's here, who works with me, and others gave out food. While the pandemic kind of slowed down a bit, we had a good balance of funds left. And we knew that Black businesses were shuttering at a clip that no other businesses were. And so we said, you know what? We're going to give out $10,000 grants to Black businesses in New Haven. And so we set up a framework, myself, Anna Blanding, Paul McCraven, to give out grants to those. And that dovetailed into our Black Business Entrepreneurship Academy, while at the same time, Alexandra, we looked at a 45,000 square foot building right on the edge of Newhallville, was the old Newhall Street School. And we purchased that building and created a Black Business Incubator.
That's the lab.
That's the lab at Concord.
Got it.
And so, you know, and there's some incredible entrepreneurs there who are visionary. I saw Malachi Easton, who is here, and Alicia Crutchfield from Bloom, who's tearing the city up, is part of our Entrepreneurship Academy. But there are some incredible people who just needed a lift so they can get their ideas and their visions up and going, and then hopefully catch up to what is happening in the atmosphere in New Haven. And so I tell that story as hopefully a salient example of what could be done to get folks lifted up and be a part of an economy that is moving very fast. So, you know, the short of it is, I think the sore spot, again, the fault line is that, you know, New Haven is moving at a speed that some folks may not be able to catch up to. And we got to find a way to get folks to a place where they're living with a sense of dignity and liberty.
Last question. Mariko, you mentioned that Caesar Pelli is working in New Haven. I'd love to hear what if it's public or if you're able to share, I'd love to hear what you're working on to give folks a sense of exciting projects.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about the life science buildings. Our office is currently working on Square 10 with Ancora. We're doing a commercial life science project, 265 South Orange Street. I mean, I think it's you know, one of the sort of flexible building types that you're seeing going around in all of the innovation hubs that we've worked on. And that's, you know, really looking at really hedging your bets and having a building that can pivot between office and, you know, research lab. So again, that's an exciting project. We're really actually excited about it because of its site, you know, right opposite the Knights of Columbus building. It forms a kind of a gateway to Orange Street.
Mariko's being modest. This has been a huge parking lot for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's
visible from the highway.
Yeah. And it's the welcoming mat to New Haven for many people that come off onto Route 34. And there's a lot of residential development that's going up right there now.
Yep.
But the Ancora building is the first building that is going to be built on spec. So that, you know, that they wanted to invest in New Haven because they believed in the growth in bioscience without having secure tenants. And so it's going to be just an incredible building and a real message to the rest of the innovation world out there that New Haven is a place to invest in.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty exciting. We've talked a couple times about New Haven being the cultural hub of Connecticut and really culturally significant nationally. Caesar Pelli is a firm that's doing work in Kuala Lumpur, built the Salesforce Tower in San Francisco, right? The tallest building west of the Mississippi. Did I get that right?
That's right.
And you're based here, which is really exciting. We have some of the greatest thinkers in the world coming at Yale, and then also coming out of Yale and staying in New Haven, and keeping that knowledge and keeping that intellectual horsepower here, which then goes on to be exported out to the rest of the country. So we are a powerhouse culturally, and obviously we're growing. One last thing, I know I said I had the last one, but I believe maybe you guys are looking at Union Station here in New Haven as a potential opportunity. If you can talk about that, or if not, I'd maybe ask the mayor to talk a little bit about our Union Station and everything that's going on there.
it's a very exciting, I mean, the whole idea of taking a site and creating a transportation hub tied in with the railroad station. I mean, it's very exciting. It's something that, we've seen in many cities. Salesforce Tower is really attached to a transportation center, and it's a TOD. It has, if you base something on that type of project, it has the park on the roof, but it's also a transportation center. But what it did was it attracted all these buildings around it. I mean,
in San Francisco, you're saying the transit district.
The transit district, just new construction happened all around the transportation center, just because it was proximate to transportation. But everybody wanted to be there. They wanted to be part of the party. So I think the Union Station as a project is, a great stimulus to sort of developing that portion of the town. And I'm sure you have other things that you might want.
Yeah, you want to give us a little preview of what the city's hoping for there?
So a great city has really easy ways to get to and from that city, right? That attracts more businesses, but it also attracts more people that want to live in that city because they can also visit other places, or if they're working remotely, fly to or train to somewhere easily. And we've seen a pretty massive expansion in the two transportation hubs in New Haven. One is Tweed New Haven Airport, where we have a project in the pipeline to build an entire new terminal that will expand the access to flights. And we've already seen with the Velo airline flying into Tweed, I think it's over 20 destinations now, whereas 4 years ago it was 0. So that's been a remarkable change for our city. And if you haven't flown it yet, it's really cheap to get to places that you want to go. And then the second is Union Station, our train station that we've come to an agreement with the state about how to expand Union Station. Either side of Union Station is basically vacant lots right now, and we're going to create some additional parking, but a transportation hub, so it's easier for people to get rideshare and bus transportation. And then on the other side, we've got an RFP out there for organizations to provide their vision for what that could be, whether it is a hotel or a hotel conference center or a significant residential development. And finally, across the street from Union Station is Church Street South, which is this, I think it's 14 acres of nothing right now. It's just a vacant lot. And we're looking to put hundreds and hundreds of residential units there that will totally transform the look and feel when you exit Union Station and be an incredible asset to the city. I'd add one more thing, that while Sbarro is great, we're also working on the inside of Union Station. And we're going to do a lot of renovations inside Union Station to have more retail business that can grow there, and ideally pizza that reflects what New Haven is known for. So stay tuned on that.
I'll put my own 2 cents on Union Station. You can tell I'm very excited about it. The way many of you probably came here via train. I hope you did. This saves us all some greenhouse gases. When you get here, the experience of leaving Union Station is not it's just not representative of what it's like to be doing business or living in New Haven right now. And so I'm really looking forward to very material progress that the mayor's mentioned on developing the land around Union Station, densifying Union Station itself, so that when you come here, and I think it's the 6th busiest train station in America, don't quote me on that, but it's close. When you come and use this beautiful train station that so many people are going through, and you come and you immediately understand the caliber of city that you're entering, and not just sort of have to figure that out later once you get downtown. We're really excited that the front door to New Haven will be exactly representative of what the rest of the city is like. And so I applaud the mayor for his doing a lot to get a very difficult project moving. With that, I'm going to say thank you to all of our panelists. This has been great. I hope you have all enjoyed. Thank you for sticking with us.